Welcome back to the Let's Talk Business podcast. I'm your host, James Price, and this is episode 34. And this episode brings a dude that I describe loosely as a very talented gentleman. He's an entertainer, a rap hip-hop artist, but he's also deep in community services, and he's moved around a bit across our nation. Kayo, thanks for coming on board.
Thank you.
Great to see you, bro.
Pleasure to be here.
And I will say, right from the top, he's also a Parramatta Eels supporter.
That's it.
How good is that?
That's it. Eels all day, baby.
All day, but they need to move up the ladder a bit. Kayo, thank you very much for joining us. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, your surname, how do you pronounce it?
Marbilus.
Marbilus.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand your heritage goes back to West Africa, so Ghana?
Ghana, yeah.
Yeah, so is that surname synonymous with your heritage?
That's my artist name.
Oh, really?
So I won't tell you I won't tell you my real last name, but my actual I'll take it back. So Kayo Marbilus, I've actually had that artist name I actually created when I was in high school.
Right.
So we're talking like, I guess we're showing my age, but like 1999.
Yeah.
When I first really started rapping and stuff and get into the industry independently, I created Kayo Marbilus. My first name is Kwabena, which is Tuesday, means Tuesday.
Kwabena.
In Ghanaian. So
right.
I got named after the day of the week. So you got like Kwabena, Kofi, Kwesi, Kojo. You might remember Kofi Annan.
Yeah.
United Nations leader. He's Ghanaian.
Yeah.
I think he died, rest in peace. So when you hear those names, comes from a Ghanaian name.
Right.
And my last name starts with M. So when I was 15 and I was trying to think of a rap name, I was like, what name can I create that's similar to my real name? So I created Kayo Marbilus. Kayo, I just got from a movie. I was watching this movie when I was a kid. There's some hip hop gangster movie, as you do when you're 15, 14. I was like, that sounds cool. Yeah. Marbilus, I just created from God knows where.
Yeah.
So Kayo Marbilus. But yeah, Kayo Marbilus is my artist name, and I've had it for so long that some people call me Kayo, and then some people call me Kwabena. But the nickname is Kwabs. So Kwabs is the nickname got given to me when I was a child, probably by an Australian Aussie teacher. Really? Because, Kwabs is probably easier than Kwabena.
Kwabena, yeah.
Yeah, and then I've been called Kwabsy once or twice, but I'd rather not people call me Kwabsy.
No.
That's taken to the next level. But so Kwabs has been my nickname. That's like my nickname as people know me personally. Kwabs is what I've been getting called since I was like 6 or 7, probably 6.
Yeah.
But Kwabena is my real name, but Kayo Marbilus is my artist name. So, and I just stuck to that. And people over the years have said, "Oh, why don't you drop the Marbilus and just call yourself Kayo?" And I said, because if you Google my name, there's only one Kayo Marbilus in the world ever.
Yeah, lovely.
But there's I googled the name. I googled Kayo. I googled Kwabs, and there's actually a UK British singer called Kwabs.
Right.
And he's African, and I'm pretty sure he's Ghanaian. And
is that right?
And at that point I was like, I thought I was the only Kwabs in the world, but there's actually a few with that nickname after, getting, short for Kwabena.
So Kwabena,
yeah.
Kwabena, how important is your heritage, your Ghanaian heritage to you? I mean, you're as an Australian as me, right?
Definitely.
We're both Australians, but just in terms of the way you live your life and what have you now, if you reflect back on that heritage, which is always there, I guess.
Exactly.
How important is it?
Pretty important, man. So first of all, my parents spoke Ghanaian to me, so I speak fluent Ghanaian, and it's always a magic trick when I tell people because my English, the Aussie accent is so strong, obviously, that people think I'm British or blah blah whatever. Well, I actually speak fluent Ghanaian because my parents spoke it to me since I was a kid. So growing up as a child, speaking Ghanaian fluently and then speaking English has just been normal. Yeah. To be bilingual. I came in when I was 2, but I went back to Ghana for the first time when I was like 21.
Right.
With my older siblings, just for a holiday. But from that point onwards, when I was a kid growing up, I was really into wanting to know about my history. So if you asked me in primary school whereabouts I was born in Ghana, I'd be able to tell you. So I knew a lot about it. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading about it, looking at the map to see where I was from and all that kind of stuff. And the Ghanaian food, if you ever, jollof rice is a favorite. I don't know if you've heard of jollof rice. It's it's a Nigerians and Ghanaians make it. It's a really popular rice, jollof rice, fufu, all types of food. So growing up, really entrenched in the culture, like I was saying to you earlier on, when we moved to Australia, like I lived in Lithgow and then moved to Canberra. But because Canberra is so close to Sydney, and there's a massive Ghanaian community in Sydney, as you probably know. I spent a lot of time going to Sydney a couple of times a year from the time we came to Australia up until 25, going to Sydney a lot. But there's a Ghanaian community in Canberra as well, but just a smaller scale. Yeah. So growing up, I was around a lot of Ghanaians, elders, people my age, and you just pick things up. So that's that. But then also going to school in Australia, I also, I came when I was 2, so I actually don't remember being in Ghana. So as far as I'm concerned, it's like I was born here. So it's like all I know is Australian culture. So I was blessed to be able to be raised in an environment where I got the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So.
And did your parents find it hard, do you think, coming here?
Yeah. So my dad was an engineer by trade, but he worked for the Department of Defence when we moved to Canberra. And my mother worked as a cleaner at the Parliament House when the Parliament House opened in the late 80s in Canberra.
Parliament House?
We lived in Campbell, up from the War Memorial.
Yeah.
My dad worked at Russell Offices.
I know Russell Offices in Canberra,
My dad worked there. I didn't find this out till later, as in like only a couple of years ago, but there's a bit of racism in that. I mean, we're talking like we were first generation Africans in Australia.
Yeah.
I came in, we settled here in December 85. So you can imagine, So, I think my parents would have copped a little bit, but they, got, pushed through it and so forth. Me personally, I copped a bit of racism and stuff.
At school?
Yeah, at school, as a kid here and there a little bit, and then growing up a little bit. But as I got older, I kind of just fizzled out a bit. But a little bit through primary school and high school. More primary school, but not it wasn't constant. It was just every now and then something happened on a racial level. But then just me being the person I am, just in general, being outspoken and boisterous, I got into fights here and there, but having to
have you always, sorry to cut you off, have you always been outspoken and boisterous?
I think I have. I think I have because because I'm self-diagnosed ADHD, so that in itself speaks volumes because I've always just a lot of energy, talk a lot, blah, blah, blah. So that's always played a part. And I think because with ADHD as well, played a part in also just how my brain, just the constant, just being creative.
Yes.
Couldn't sit still. If I got bored, I get into mischief. That played a part. I've always come with that energy. I've always had that. I've always been that talkative kid. Always, I started, performing in front of the school and doing shows and stuff when I was 15. So I never had that. When it came to anything like performance and getting up there and just being me, whatever, I just had no issues doing that. But if you want to go further back than that, when I was a kid, I was always just talkative and just a bit of a character.
When you were performing in front of people, what did that make you feel like?
Important.
Appreciated.
Yeah, important. Appreciated. Because look, first and foremost, I was doing it because I just enjoyed it. It's just fun. I just enjoy. I grew up in an era where, that time in the mid 90s, late 90s, where we just emulated everything else happening in America.
Yes.
So the American hip hop, Aussie hip hop really wasn't a thing as such. I mean, Aussie hip hop only really came into the scene probably early 2000s when it became a thing. It was cool to do hip hop, be a rapper and things like that. So all through school growing up, and I've got 3 older siblings, 3 older sisters. So you can imagine they're into the hip hop as well. They're into all that R&B and stuff. So
did they?
So thinking back now in hindsight, they'll be listening to music and I'll be hearing it as well.
Right.
And then I remember asking my sister when she'd be done with the CD, I'll grab the music and listen to it as well. So little did I know it was just planting the seed for me, just having a love for music. But I've always been into music. I remember being as far back as 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
Watching, your Rage, your video hits, remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And watching, enjoying all types of music,
So isn't that interesting? What did you like about it? Was it an escape or was it,
No, well, I'll tell you what, in those early days of when I was my memory goes back to when I was 3. So in those early days when I was 3 and 4 and 5, listening to music like Dire Straits. I remember Dire Straits, and that's my earliest memory. Listen to Dire Straits, listen to just music. I guess it's at an age where you're your brain's still developing.
Yeah.
So you're getting stimulated by certain things that are just new to you, and music happens to be one of them. So even before I was a rapper, I wanted to do rap, but it's just the music was always there. I just love the sound. I love just, it was a thing, done for me.
Yeah.
But then as the years progressed and I got older, obviously when I was like 10, 11, 12, was really loving the hip hop.
Yeah.
And then when I got to about year 7, high school, then I was like, yeah, really into the hip hop and the rap and stuff. But it wasn't until I got to about year 10, when I was like 15, that's when I was like, oh yeah, I'll give this poetry a go and start writing poetry and things like that.
Really?
But this goes back to the escape thing. So by the time I got to 15, I think it was then, without even me knowing that, I didn't even realize until later on, but it was an escape where it was like, it made me feel good.
Yes.
I'll be able to sit in my room and just, back then, you're talking 99, so you're writing from a piece of paper, right? And it's hard to go back and do that now. I freaking struggle having to write it down. Like, come on, man, like it's so hard, but we come from that generation. So having to write the lyrics down and write the lyrics and stuff, and that made me feel really, really good. So, and in that same year, I was doing that. I was also going to the underage events and parties and stuff and picking up the microphone and freestyling. And
were you?
Yeah, and rapping and rapping and just freestyling. And I'll be hanging with my mates and just start rapping and freestyling and just like, you're paying your mates out, rapping about them. And everyone I would always be received with like positivity, like people would laugh and go, that's freaking awesome or blah, blah, blah. So it was always like, okay, yeah, it's not too bad. People like it, so I'll keep going. And then, yeah, man, I just was doing that. And then, and then as the years progressed after high school, then I was like, okay, this is my identity, I guess. I want to, because by that time I've already got the name Kayo Marbilus at 15, 16.
Yeah, so you basically, it was etched in stone from there, right?
Yeah, and then when I got to about probably 2021, that's when I was like, oh, okay, I want to really give this a crack. So I was like, I got to start figuring out how to put the music together and put structured songs together, things like that. Yes. And I just started putting out music. But the advice I always give to people to this day is I just worked with what I had.
Right.
So like, didn't have much money, as in like I was working, but you're not going to pay, you can't afford to pay $1,000 for studio time. So some of the first projects that I had put together was just at my friend's house, who was a DJ actually. So he knew how to work equipment and that. And we were just on his mother's PC with the little PC mic, kind of like the one I got on now. And I'm just rapping in that.
Yeah.
And I put out a CD of like a couple of songs and I was just as a test run.
Yeah.
And then after that, 2004, so I'm probably like 22, 23 or whatever by that stage, then we recorded in like a radio session that he was running. So a bit of a bigger mic.
Yeah.
And then from that, as the years progressed, then I'm working more now, so I'm saving my money.
Yes.
I'm getting in a proper home studio and then recording, and then I'm learning the basics of recording and layers and blah, 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 and takes and this and that.
Who did you follow in terms of giving you advice along that track? Or was it really just a journey that you took yourself on? Apart from your mate who was a DJ.
Yeah.
Was it really, look, I'm just on a journey here and I like what this is and I'm going to try it and I'm going to try it some more? Is that how it was?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Because at that time, hip hop wasn't really a thing.
There was no one to look up to.
There was no community.
No.
So the only people I looked up to was people in America. So it was just a big dream. So the only thing that could motivate me was me watching. This is before the internet. So the internet was around, but this is before like social media was a thing. So I'd be watching TV and looking at magazines to be like, oh, this is what I want to be like.
So who were those artists? Who were the main artists?
Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, Nas, Ice Cube.
Do you have an ultimate king? If you mention those artists, who would you?
Probably Tupac.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tupac was probably the one because I tell the youngsters, I tell kids, he was still alive when I was listening to the guy. So he died in '96, and I remember clear as day being in year 6, being 12, and listening to some of his songs and be like, this is like awesome, like made me feel good, And that was year 6, I was 12. Yeah. But as the years progressed, I just couldn't. The music was calling me.
Yes.
So I just ended up, like I said to you before, I'm writing poetry, which then turned into writing songs and giving it a crack. But this whole time I'm doing it, there's no one guiding me. There's no one saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. I'm pretty much just figuring it out myself.
Yeah. But you're learning.
I'm learning.
And exploring.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's how I have the title now as a co-producer, because look, I'll be honest with you. If you put me in a studio, out of honesty, I really wouldn't know how to work all the equipment, but I can get in the studio and tell the producer what to do and how I want it to sound.
Yes.
Because I had to learn that as well.
Yeah.
Because I had to figure it out, how I wanted to sound, layers and this and that and all that. Because some of the first couple of producers I worked with, I didn't know. I just took their judgment and trust on how to make things sound. So I'll fork out thousands of dollars
to get someone else's advice.
And then to get someone else's advice and put the stuff together for me, then end up sounding like rubbish. Or not as good as, it wouldn't be as mixed and mastered as it should have been.
Yeah.
Because, but now, I know it has to be mixed, has to be mastered. Even if they say to me it's been mixed and mastered, I know if it doesn't sound right, if the layers aren't together, I just know. And I had to learn that myself through trials and tribulations and things like that.
That's amazing. You know, I just want to go back a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like you were talking about those underage parties, right?
Yeah.
And putting yourself out there and, you know, obviously, you know, having a bit of rap and having some fun on the floor. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were making yourself vulnerable, right? Mm. Essentially, weren't you? Like, yeah, probably. Or did you have that much confidence that it didn't matter? Like you were doing, I'm sorry, I'm assuming that you were doing stuff that I haven't done this before, but I'm just going to give it a crack because I think it'd be fun.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It was, I'm there, the music's playing, everyone's having a good time. I'm with my mates. The microphone's there, and I'm just like, hey, give me the microphone, I'll just bust the rap. And then I remember like the first time I ever done it, I remember clear as I remember like, I was at one of the underage events, might have been the first one I went to, and I grabbed the microphone and I started rapping, and everyone started looking around to see who it was, thinking it was like maybe the music, whatever. I never ever once had any kind of negative energy towards it or vibe or anything like that. It was always just fun. It was just fun, and people always welcomed it with positivity. So with every time I'd done something, whether it was grabbing the mic and singing over a track or just freestyling with friends at a party, people would always just have that smile on their face, like, yeah, this guy's like, this is pretty clever, this is pretty cool. Yeah. So it was always, but it was fun, you know, and you know, it was always just fun. It was just fun to do it, especially when I started experimenting with the freestyle stuff, and I'll just freestyle off just what's in front of me and paying out my mates or whatever, and then people would laugh, think it's funny. So it was always just about fun, and you know, I don't know, like I guess if it wasn't gonna amount to much, I would have figured that out. But
by the reactions and just how you felt.
But you know, I think it's like by the reaction maybe, but I couldn't say by the reaction because if we stopped doing things by the reaction of people, we wouldn't succeed, would we? So it wouldn't have been by the reaction. It would have just been me just losing interest. Yeah. Really, because I used to play basketball. See, I used to play basketball for a team, and I played basketball from 12 to 15, 12 to 14. Then I just got over and quit. But coincidentally, around that time afterwards, I started getting into the hip hop more.
Yeah, right.
So I dropped one thing, picked up another.
Yeah.
So that's how I explain it. It started off as a hobby, bit of fun, but as the years progressed, I just kept at it, chipping away bit by bit.
Do you think you were attracted to the fact that it was more than just vocals? It was vocals plus movement?
I think the whole package. I think the whole...
as a way of expressing
the whole
yourself?
Culture, it's a whole bunch of things. Without knowing, obviously I know this now, but I think what it was doing for me back then, it was a positive outlet of anger.
Of course.
Kept me out of trouble. The most important thing it did for me was, look, I'll tell you the truth, if I hadn't if music didn't really grab me at that age, at that time, I would have went down the rails. I reckon I would have.
Do you feel?
Yeah, because that was my identity. And that was something that made me feel good, and it was something to be able to escape, like you said, the escape thing, whatever I was going through. So I feel like if I didn't, and what that done for me was, as the years progressed and I was getting more into the music, whenever there would be opportunities for me to do mischief or do bad things with people, that kind of pulled me back in for some weird reason.
So it was a rudder for you?
Yeah, it was... to be honest, it saved my life. Yeah, music really did. Yeah, 100%. Because I know for a fact, because it kind of, especially as the years progressed more, I got into my mid-20s and late 20s. I've still got my best mates and good friends, which I have to this day, but I'm also still friends with people that are kind of like, you know, bit whatever. So
yeah.
And that the reason why I've had friends on both sides of the fence is because of my upbringing, what I've had to encounter. I've had to, you know, you go through things, you have to be a certain kind of person. So you get drawn to those kinds of people. Over the years, I was reminded of the person I could have become based on the people I'm friends with that still respect me, but also I'm also reminded of where I'm at because of the achievements and things like that. So I've always been on both sides.
So you made some tough choices by the sound of it in that process, right?
Big time, yeah.
So part of it sounds like was the rudder of music pulling you along.
100%.
But what were the other sort of compasses that helped you there? Were your parents important in that, or was it just you?
Parents as well. I can't take all the credit. My dad was pretty strict. So the honest truth is, there was a lot of things that I was like, yeah, if I do that, Dad finds out, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So that kept me in the straight and narrow, and also just you don't want to embarrass your family, things like that as well, things like that. And then more importantly, I was like, I don't want to get locked up.
No.
I don't want to go to jail. I was always really observant and aware of danger.
Right.
And aware of like, if you go and do this, this is not really safe. Like this, there could be some serious repercussions, either physically or legal wise, things like that as well. Yeah. And I'll just be like, nah, it's not for me, So a mixture of my family keeping me in line. I come from a good family with good morals and stuff. Yeah. And then the music as well was definitely a catapult just to be like, yeah, dude, just hang in there. And I used to, I'm very spiritual. So I would always have feelings of, I don't know what's coming, but just hang in there, you'll be fine. Even in times when I wasn't sure if things were going to happen for me at some point with certain things. So I would just keep going. And what kept me going was, and I made one promise to myself probably when I got to about 25, when I had already dropped a couple of songs and probably a couple of, one or two projects. I said to myself, with every year that goes by, as long as I've achieved one thing the year before,
yes,
it's enough to keep going. So as long as 12 months passes and I've done something.
And you can point to something that you've achieved over that period.
Achieved that period, then you just got to keep going. So that could be anything from just doing a lot of interviews, getting in magazines, which I've done. And then that was one thing, because that just showed me that there's still an interest.
Yes, yes.
Keep in mind, I'm coming from Canberra. So before social media was a thing, my ways of reaching out to people in Sydney and other parts of America, overseas, was just, I'd say more Sydney at the point.
Yeah.
Would just be emails, sending emails, jumping on websites and just finding anyone that would listen to my music and send it to them. And what I used to do is in those early days of like 2005, 2006, when massive DJs would come down to Canberra to perform, to DJ, I would just make myself known and say hello and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I built a good connection with a lot of DJs and stuff from Sydney. And because of that, something was telling me that, because I'm from Canberra. So I'm chasing this dream that's so secluded, like it's really me doing it, chasing this dream, but I'm doing it in Canberra. No community, no nothing, just a dream, yeah? So...
a very closed community.
A very closed community. So a lot of my people I'm looking up to, or inspiration, was drawn from just internal, just manifesting, just visions and dreaming about it.
But that's amazing, bro.
You know what I mean?
Like, to build it internally, you've got to have a lot of strength, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to draw sort of a few parallels with the world of business, because
100%.
Vulnerability at those underage parties, which is what I call it. I don't want to characterize you wrongly, but
that's fine.
You were prepared to put yourself out there, right?
Yeah.
And demonstrate a vulnerability.
Yeah.
In the spirit of enjoyment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
and also entertaining, right?
Yes.
Because I'm sure you weren't just doing it for yourself. You were doing it because the crowd was there.
Exactly.
But in business, the really best of the business owners have the ability to be vulnerable, and they don't mind being vulnerable in front of their team, right? But many of us struggle with that vulnerability. We struggle at a young age, let alone right through our careers. Yeah. And it limits our ability to see where the potential is, right? And so, it doesn't surprise me when you say I was building this career in a small circle, and I had to build it myself, because you were prepared to be, prepared to hang yourself out there.
Prepared to take a loss. Yeah. People are, and it relates to what you're saying in regards to business, like, because it became a brand after a while. So the Kayo Marbilus name became a brand. Backing yourself, putting money into things of my dream, into recording time and this and that, not knowing that you're going to make that money back.
Yes.
Not doing it for the sake of becoming a millionaire.
Taking a risk.
Yeah. But then you're doing it because the feeling of just wanting to have that dream come true is actually priceless. So you don't even put a limit on how much you're going to spend. You just keep going, because it's better to spend that money and try. And if it doesn't work, you have more peace knowing that you tried, as opposed to not trying at all.
Wow.
And then always wondering what could have been, which is like a forever turmoil. Yeah.
I mean, that's beautiful, right?
It's the same thing about business.
Of course it is.
It's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. The only difference is I'm actually selling myself as a human being, I'm the brand, the person in flesh, as opposed to but it's actually the same, because you have to, as a person, push that brand and be the face and so forth.
Of course.
To a certain extent.
Of course it is. So, the brand, right? Mm-hmm. What are 3 words that would describe your brand?
Oh man, I haven't been asked that before. Strength, courage, determination.
Yeah.
And if there's 4th, faith. I don't know. Yeah. There's probably a lot of words I could put in there, but
courage, determination, strength.
Yeah, I'd say
faith.
Which is, they're all similar. They're all similar stuff. Yeah. But that's just what comes to my mind, because without those things, especially faith, because faith is the believing in something that there's no evidence of, and just pushing through, not knowing what. There's no evidence or proof to say that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
We have the faith, and that's just, you're going to just keep going until whatever it is comes and evolves without you knowing what that may be.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like you said before, it does start at a young age, because if I didn't have that confidence at the beginning, that wouldn't have carried through. Because if you haven't got it's like the flame got lit, and then it slowly just
developed.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, when did you find out in yourself that you were very good at what you do?
To be honest with you, I've never ever kind of been that person, be like, look at me, I'm really good. I've always just kind of laid it out like, what I'm doing well. I'm good at it.
Yes.
It's kind of being humble. It's like I've always been grateful the fact that I've been able to still keep going. So I've never ever been like, oh, look at me. The time that I got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm onto something here.
Yes.
Probably would have been, I started putting out music in 2004. I always had a few achievements. So, I told you how as long as I'd done something the year before, I'd keep going.
Yes.
That story I told you, that when I first done that we were just mucking around recording some stuff. I never released it on my friend's PC. We never released that, but I just had that as a bit of a test run. That was probably 2002. But 2004, when I did the first recording at the radio station, we did a couple of songs, did an artwork for it, and actually dropped out as a single. Once again, it wasn't the best, but when that music was done and I actually sent it out to, do you remember 3D World?
Yes.
3D World magazine?
Yeah, absolutely.
So 3D World, my sister used to get the magazine, and then when she would be done with it, she'd give it to me and I would go through it, because this is before the internet was a big thing. So everyone's, entertainment was in the magazines and stuff and TV. Yeah. So I'll be just, involved into it.
On it.
Yeah, right. And then I was reading that magazine for years, but that was before I was putting music out. So by the time I had worked on my first project in 2004, I was like, that's right, these magazines have all these contact emails and stuff at the back. So what I would do is I would just go through it, and sometimes there'll be some stuff there and that would connect with me, and I'd be like, okay, cool. So I'll just get the CD, I print, and I'll just post them to people. And one of the articles, one of the ads in the back was for music needed for a TV show or something. Yeah. So I sent the CD off. 6 months went by, I didn't hear nothing. I was like, oh, whatever. I didn't care. I was like, listen, I gave it a go. Then my friend calls me one day and he's like, bro, I just heard your song on Fuel Channel, on that extreme sports, that extreme Fuel Channel. And I was like, no. He's like, no. I was like, I was up like at 1 a.m. watching TV and your song come on. I was like, I don't believe you. And then about 3 or 4 months went by and he's like, dude, I heard it on there again. And then I was like, and I think he even sent me like a photo, or he just told me that it was on there. So I was like, every year I had something. So that was that. So I hadn't even put out a song, music that was any good quality. Yeah. But it got on TV. Yeah. I never got to see it to this day, but it made me feel good. Yeah. In those early stages. So That CD that was 3 songs, I had just pushed that around for a bit. I was just handing them out for free. I was just giving them out, whatever. And that's 2004. So I'm still doing, a couple of shows here and there. Actually, by that time, 2004, I'm in my early 20s. So I started emceeing at events.
Right.
So that's when the whole emceeing thing came into it, because I've done a lot of emceeing in clubs as well. Even when I moved to Melbourne, I was doing emceeing events and done weddings and stuff. So I was doing whatever that I could that would mean me with a microphone in my hand and just pushing the brand. And then fast forward 2007, I dropped my first official 19-track CD called Canberra Stand Up the Mixtape.
Yes.
Which it was a big project, and it took me like 4 or 5 months. I was writing every week. I was on LimeWire, going on LimeWire and downloading the free beats. Kids these days would never know how fun it was back then. Just downloading instrumentals by my disposal, instrumentals, samples, all that stuff, and then just getting it, writing to it, going to the studio, recording, and I'd done that weekly for about a couple of months. Songs from that project in 2007 got on Fat Pizza.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I'm going through this journey where I'm independent. I'm in Canberra. I'm still not satisfied. I'm still at that point, I'm trying to get signed to a label, because back in those days, to get signed to Universal or Sony was that was the goal. Not so now, not so much over the years.
No, it's changed a bit,
Independent. It's just a different world now. That never happened, which was fine, because all that just did was just keep me just pushing and hustling, and then put me in a different type of mind frame. 2012 was when I won the Artist of the Year. They had the Canberra Music Awards, and I won Hip Hop Artist of the Year for that. That would be, I would say, from 2004 to 2012, I was just pushing along, just pushing along. And then 2012, Canberra had their first music awards called the Mama Awards, which was at Albert Hall.
Yes.
You know the Albert Hall?
Yeah, I do.
Really suave, place.
It is. Yeah.
And that ran for 2 years in a row. Now, I won the first one. I won Urban Artist of the Year, 2012. My best mates came. They had known since primary school, high school, seen me go through all the thing. I was wearing a suit, got up there. When they said my name, I was like, I had an out-of-body experience. It was crazy.
How did you feel?
It was amazing. It was really, really cool. That was the time when I was, from that point onwards, I was like, I can now go to sleep knowing that I'm not just mucking around,
Yeah, right.
Because for years, you're just pushing along thinking, I'm just give this a go and see what happens. But 2012 was a pinnacle moment.
Where you were recognised sufficiently for the profession that you were in.
Yeah, within Canberra. And that was my first accolade where I was like, it's like a title, Urban Artist of the Year.
It's amazing. I ask that question because I think it's important for all of us individually, but also in business, right? Mm-hmm. Or in any profession. Mm-hmm. And it's not about boasting one's ability, but internally, it's important to get to a point where you know your value. And that's not necessarily a dollar sign, right? Because if you know your value and you know what you're really good at, then it does give you an internal confidence, right? What I think's interesting is some in business and in personal lives, they know their value, but that kind of is a bookend to how they develop.
Yeah.
With what you've described, that was only one element. The other element was that you were punching yourself forward to try and learn more and develop more. And I think the other fascinating insight that you've talked to us about is you're a bit of a networker, right?
Yeah, big time.
You were a networker back in the day when as you say, social media didn't really exist, but you were still sending those CDs out. And that requires, I feel to be a good networker, you've got to have a long-term view. I don't know whether you agree or disagree, but like back in the day, you were in your 20s, I guess.
20s, your 20s.
It's hard to have a long-term view in your 20s. If I take myself back there, I'd struggle to have a long-term view, right? But when you think about it...
it's interesting. Yeah, you have to always pat yourself on the back. You don't have to necessarily externally be like, hey, look at me, but you have to internally look at yourself.
Give yourself a few strokes.
Look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm freaking awesome. I can do this. I'm what I've done is good. You have to celebrate those achievements because that fuels you to keep going. And it's important in those early stages to give yourself the pat on the back and have that confidence, because that's those early stages where it's make or break based on people around you. Sometimes it's people closest to you that can't see your vision. Same as business, people that are closest to you that are like, your dream is so big,
Yes.
they somehow want to,
They doubt?
they doubt you. It's sometimes, I actually only heard this a couple of years ago, that they're not saying, oh, maybe you should try something else, you sure, because they're hating on you, because they actually feel like they don't want you to fail and be disappointed. But the reality is, some people just aren't you and just don't have that entrepreneurial drive as you. So they come across like they're doing it because they care, but really they pretty much dream killers. That's one side. But then the other side is, then there is also, and I've had people like this in my life, there's people who are also genuinely jealous of you based on their own insecurities. So when they see you shine and you're starting to do something that's out of the norm, that's amazing, it makes them check themselves and be like, oh, it makes them realize what they're not and what.
Do you think they're jealous, basically?
Pretty much, yeah. So that's the two elements that I've had. That's the two elements in anything, business, everything.
But you've had to deal with,
big time, yeah. Through the whole time, and I still do it to this day.
Yeah.
The higher you go and the more you're doing better, the more you have to actually be more strong, because it doesn't get easy where it's like, oh, I'm successful now and everything's going to be good. You're going to get more hate.
Yeah.
Because the energy that you're now projecting is so strong and so bigger that whatever people were feeling about you before, they're going to have that times 10 in regards to, tall poppy syndrome. It's going to be magnified, Yeah.
No, it's fascinating. Hey, spiritual. Talked about that a little earlier, and you said that faith was one of the core components of your brand. Do you think things happen for a reason, or do you think things happen because you make them happen?
I think things happen because you make them happen, as in like you have to, in your physical body, in your physical form, push to make things happen. I think a lot of opportunities are put in front of us.
Yes.
And some people choose to ignore them, or they do take them on but not see it for what it is and they just stuff it up.
Yeah, okay.
You don't have to even be a person of faith, but when you are set to do something and you put your mind to it and you feel like things are going to happen and you can feel it, then in that aspect of things, like I was on TV, for example, and I've been on radio, and it's like I didn't know they were going to happen at this time, but I could feel it, that something was going to come. But the reason why those things were put in place and I was able to execute those goals and plans and so forth was because I kept on going.
Yes.
So there's things in front of us that are there waiting for us. We have to go through this and A, B, and C to do it. Unfortunately, some people don't realize what success or what, these things really mean. They think it's going to be easy, not realizing that it's never going to be easy. And you're actually constantly going through a lot of struggles and things to get there. And people think once you reach the final goal, it's all going to be cherries and blossoms and that, but it's not even the case. It's always, you're constantly having to remind yourself, you got to keep staying on your toes and so forth. You can't just sit back and do nothing. Nothing's going to happen. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
You got to do something. But some people, I believe, are put on here on this earth to be, I think they're spiritually just shine differently.
Really?
Energy-wise.
Yeah, right.
I've only got into the manifestation stuff and the law of attraction, law of vibration stuff just in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And the more I've tapped into it, it's all the same. It's all about whether you're religious or not. We can't deny that there is and it's been scientifically proven that you can't deny that we're not just living as is in the flesh, like you and I talking now, as you and I sitting here talking now. There is a level of spiritual energy of some sort, supernatural energy of some sort that's brought us here today, and it's having us connect the way we are. And that same energy that you carry in the flesh in person, if it's strong enough, people will see that on the screen.
Well, people will say it themselves, but I can vouch for it. I can tell you, there's some energy in this room.
Yeah, 100%. So, we are all capable of achieving whatever we want to do. I believe the first step is to have that understanding of what you want to do, the dreams that you want to do.
Yes.
Then to execute it by feeling it and saying, okay, this is what I want to do. Then you start to make the plans A, B, and C to what that looks like in regards to planning to do that, whatever that may look like. Then once you get there, it's understanding that you're in this thing and this is what you're going to do, and then you're going to block everything else out and you're going to give it a crack.
Well, that's right. But I mean, what you've articulated, I'll summarize it from my perspective. You're saying plan out what you want to do. In other words, come up with the ideas and the plans, But then when you're in it, focus on delivery and focus on having a crack. But recognise that the path to success may be windy and may have a number of steps. And it's not necessarily, a Tokyo bullet train to Osaka, boom, boom, so to speak. So I think that's, a really good insight, right? That can be applied right across personal
100%.
life, business life, and,
A lot of hurdles.
and the like.
Yeah.
I got so much to ask you, Kayo. I just lyrics, right?
Yeah.
Lyrics. Now, so it seems to me that there's two things in the music area. One is lyrics, and the other is performance. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things, right?
Yeah.
In terms of reaching out and the commercials, if you like, around it. But which do you find easier, the lyrics or the performance? And how do you go about putting lyrics together?
Like I said, I started doing the freestyle and the rapping and stuff when I was 15, so that's just normal, natural. It's both come at the same time, so I really couldn't tell you what's easier. What's more important to me is the lyrics and the music, because that's what is feeding my soul.
Right.
That's what's helping me mentally.
Yes.
I could go 5 years without doing a performance, and I haven't done shows for a while, but I could go, and I used to do it. This was me over the last for years, the way I wouldn't do performances for a long time, but I'm still writing music, putting music out.
Yeah.
That's, for me, is like really important, especially when you're writing music that your people will listen to and be like, oh, I can relate to that. And I made a promise to myself when I first started writing music was, I have to write it and do it in the way that how I listened to it when I was growing up. I have to give back to what the music done for me.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's what I would try to do. I had a bad day, I'll just write stuff and so forth. And the finished product of when I'm in the studio and I'm recording it, and it's finished. And to think that this was just starting off as just listening to an instrumental, and then I put lyrics over it, because I would spend, by the time the song has been finished, as in like the lyrics have been done in my phone, and I'm just still rapping it over my, rapping it to the instrumental. I know by the time I go into the studio and to record it, it's going to sound similar but better.
Yes.
But just to have the ideals in my head on paper, then actually I can just play it, listen to it, is just spiritually just it's an amazing feeling.
Well, I was going to say, is that the moment of satisfaction?
That's the moment of satisfaction, and be like, yes. And then what gets exciting is like, I'm about to put it out and see what people think of it.
Yeah, of course.
And that's vulnerability again.
Absolutely. That's
right?
I think
that's the ultimate vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Because I can get up and do it and rap in that, but I'm telling my personal story, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people are going to take it.
Yeah.
But that's the joys of hip hop and rap, because it's just, and that comes with the whole back when I was a kid, not caring, and just you just do what you got to do, and just, that behavior, attitude, And one thing I learned was music is universal. So I go into it knowing that not everyone's going to like my songs, and that's fine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of songs I don't like. It's just some will like it, some won't. I won't take it personal. It's music. Not everyone's going to like your stuff.
Yeah.
Do
you think that's a barrier to some musicians and artists, though? They don't have that ability to almost set aside from what the public thinks?
Yeah, I think this is like, for example, this is why I would say some of these artists that are so big, it's like, do you really want to be that big? Because you get to a point where, you say boo, and the whole world will judge you on it.
Yeah.
Or things like that. I think the majority of artists understand that vulnerability and being judged and stuff, and they've kind of dealt with it. But then over the years, as we know in the history of music, depending on what happens in someone's life, it can really break people down.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially one thing I've noticed as I've gotten older is that a lot of people who have become artists, whether they're musicians or whatever it may be in the world of art, they do it for escape as well.
Yes.
I've actually always made a joke and said, a lot of musicians aren't normal. They have a quirky kind of weird thing, and that's because that comes part and parcel with that industry, That's why we've had a lot of, you see a lot of artists who they've got it all.
Yes.
But then it's like, how has this person got it all, but they're still on drugs and they're getting banged up? It's because that's why they've been able to create such good music, because it's an escape, it's a thing, that's how the brain works. And
it's an extreme, right?
It's an extreme, and their brain works in such a way that it's unfortunate that some artists weren't able to kind of like Amy Winehouse, for example, and people like that.
Yeah, able to manage that.
Kurt Cobain. I mean, there's heaps of artists like that who had everything,
Yeah.
but his demons and stuff overpowered all the other stuff. The talent, And there is artists that have been around for a long time, and you think they've got it all together, and then as they progress, they may put out a song or something will happen that goes in the tabloids, and they just can't cope.
Yes.
So you just never know as individuals' coping mechanism, whether you think they've got it or not, how long they've been around for. Sometimes people just, they just snap and just be like, whatever. Whether it's at the beginning of the career or the ending or the beginning or the middle, whatever. 2007, when I was putting out my second project, the Canberra Stand Up mixtape, I wasn't aware at the time of Aussie hip hop, urban hip hop. I didn't realize there was a dividance of it. People rap in an American accent like I do, or Aussie rap and this and that.
Yeah.
And I had organised. I had that. By the time I dropped that CD, I was like new into the industry independently. Yeah. I was new. I was excited. I was just getting to know the industry, local rappers, and my thing was to get as many local rappers on the CD as possible. And keep in mind, I'm paying for the studio time, so I don't care I just want to put out music and I'll pay for the studio time, get people on there.
Get it happening.
It happening. And there was some local hip hop artists in Canberra, and my producer at the time, he said, because he was already kind of in the industry a little bit, so he knew a couple of rappers, and he was like, we'll get these people to jump on the to come to your CD launch at the ANU bar.
Yeah, right.
And so we organised all that, organised the night, and they said they would come and perform, and we put their names on the flyer. The flyers were done.
Yes.
Then they turned around last minute and said, we're not going to perform at Kayo's launch. And my producer's like, why? And he's like, because... and this is when the hate, I really started feeling this whole getting hated on for no reason. And they said, because if we perform at his launch, people will lose respect for us. And I was thinking, this is weird. Like, I don't even know you. I've done nothing wrong. I'm just an artist. And in hindsight, thinking back now, I think I took off really quickly at that point because I was putting all my money, hard-earned money, into this project. And people are looking at me going, how is this guy doing this?
Yeah.
And it's sad because if people, and I still say to this day how it's funny how people's brain ticks and how people think. Instead of working with people and saying, I'll work with this guy and just whatever, they'll rather, the hate and jealousy kicks in, then they distance themselves and they actually attack you instead, which I think is just so ignorant and so stupid, right? Right? Same as business.
It's exact same as business.
Exact same thing. Exact same thing, right? There was an online website called AussieHipHop.com. There was like a forum, and this is before social media. So you go on the forum, right, and you could just talk about whatever was going on. The word got around really quickly that I had been apparently putting people's names on flyers to perform at my show that had never agreed to. And people were believing it. And I'm going, why the hell would I put people on a flyer if they weren't going to perform?
Like, that doesn't look good on me.
Why would I do that? It's just stupid. Who would do that?
Not logical.
It's not logical. It's just silly, right? So I'm watching this forum, and people are really like talking crap about me. Like, it's going hard. This went on for weeks.
Yeah.
Not once did those two guys jump on there and say, no, this is actually what happened. This is the truth.
It's not,
we actually had agreed, but then they just let that ride and just tried to just pretty much just destroy me.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And I'll tell you now, that has come from jealousy, because why would you do that to somebody if they've done nothing wrong to you, apart from just to, this guy's making too much noise. He's probably we don't want him to outshine us, so we're going to try and cut him down.
So, bro, did you feel alone?
Oh, 100%.
And it felt tough, right?
Getting the hate from the haters, from those people in the Aussie, not being welcomed with open arms from the music industry, not the music industry, but just from Canberra locals.
Yeah.
Parents not supporting my thing, because obviously, I'm just young. My parents are like, what are you doing wasting money on this stuff? Go to uni, become a doctor or something. My closest friends, they're supporting, but then kind of not. They are, but I'm really alone.
Well,
right.
Yeah, not to make excuses for them, but you were doing something that they'd never seen.
Never seen before.
Not in this country.
No.
Right?
No.
So it was lonely, yeah?
It was lonely, And then, look, to be honest with you, there was a bit of agony there, because I wouldn't be human to say that there wasn't days of stress, but the feeling of this hustle and just obviously shown to this day was there then. So that was overriding the other stuff. It was almost like, you know what it did? It just fueled me to keep going.
Yeah.
It fueled me even more, because if they had stopped me, that feeling of giving up is more painful than what I'm actually currently going through at that time. I just said to myself, I'm not even going to entertain it. I just said to myself, if I don't know you personally, and if I haven't done anything to you, because I've always been a person, if I've done something to you personally, by all means, I
deserve what I get.
It is what it is. I deserve what I get. And that's from growing up with certain people. You live a certain way.
You get that, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I haven't done anything wrong to you, and you're attacking me, like, you're just a hater. And I'd laugh it off. I'd actually laugh and go, you're just a hater. So I'd actually just laugh it off.
But I think that was obviously a critical time in making Kayo who he is today, right? And you were able to punch through it.
As I'm telling you the story, I'm actually still working full time as a youth worker. I worked in a school full time.
Okay.
I won't say which one, but I worked for the Department of Education. So, and then before the school, I was working in a youth centre as a youth worker. So I'm working a 9 to 5, working all day, right? Going home and then just getting to the music. And then that's the pattern, and then just writing and then blah, blah, blah. So there was times where for years and years and years when I was in Canberra, I'd go to work and I'd come home, and then I'd come home from work at 5 o'clock, and then I'd go to the studio at 6 o'clock and have to record or be at home writing.
But you had no problem doing that, obviously.
And I had no choice, because I'm like, well, no one's helping me.
And how am I going to do this if I don't?
How am I going to do if I don't, And it'll work itself out. So, and then I get a phone call, I get a message on LinkedIn to be on TV, to be on All Together Now as a music judge on Channel 7.
Yeah.
When that happened, that made that 2012 thing look like just a little
bump.
A little bump, yeah, like a little flick, rock under my shoe. When that happened, that's when I had a real supernatural, spiritual feeling, like,
did you?
I had a real, like, a thing from, like, from whoever the people
who's ever up there,
whoever's up there, that this is what I've been all these years, that 10, 15 years before, that I was trying to manifest. That was it.
Yeah, right.
And and to this day I still laugh about it and go, fuck, I can't believe I was on TV. Like, it's crazy. 2018, and to get to that point, to get on TV, to this day, never had a manager, never had an agent, and to be scouted by producers, and how they found me was looking at all the stuff that I had done over
previously,
those little things. Because when they messaged me on LinkedIn, I didn't believe. I thought it was a bit of a prank. They rang me, did the video call, him and another producer, and then I was like, oh, this is real. But they were asking me questions of things that I'd done that even I kind of forgot, because you obviously they've got to jog your memory. And
so they'd done their due diligence.
They'd done their thing. And when they started asking me those questions, I was like, yeah, this is legit, because they wouldn't go so far back and all these things if it wasn't legit. So I was like, far out. And that was in like May 2018. And then by June of the next month, I had to go to Fox Studios.
Yeah.
And do the filming for 10 days. And you had everyone, you had massive celebrities on there.
How was that?
It was unbelievable. It was so crazy. It was so unreal. It was like, oh man, it was like, I just kept on saying, far out. Thank God I never, like, all those times, but thank God I never stopped. Like, I just kept on going.
Yeah.
And that was a title, like the 2012 title of, the Urban Artist of the Year award was pretty cool, but that was like Canberra based, right?
Yes.
I got the respect for people from Canberra after that. But I was still living in Canberra when I got the TV thing as well.
Yeah.
So that just took it to another level. That was when it was like, even people who were hating on you could tell people start going, hey bro, like, congratulations.
Hey.
It's like, like it holds that much weight.
Yes.
That and this is, people talk about this all the time in all walks of life, that even you get to a level where even people that didn't like you start to respect you.
Yeah.
Because it's just,
they can't not, because
it's just, this is what's happening.
You've gone further than they ever thought.
100%.
And unfortunately, in business and in life, there's too many of us that want to be like someone else.
Yeah.
Right? And it's no good being like someone else, because you can't be by definition.
Yeah.
And so somewhere along the line, it's going to get difficult and hard if you're going to try and emulate someone, like, and it's hard. We all go through those lessons, because it's often the grass does look greener, right?
The thing is, sorry to cut you off. The thing
no,
is,
you're right.
It's like, you don't want to be like me. You don't want to go through what I had to go through to get to where I'm at. And if you could go back and then get put into that, you want out.
Yeah.
So, and this is the thing, like you said, you don't want to be like someone else. You want to be you. You want to be the better version of you. You want to be the best version
Absolutely.
of you. That's how you become that person, by being unique and being different. You know what I mean?
Exactly right. Let me ask you though, along those lines, you're helping a lot of young people, and you have done over many years.
20 years, yeah.
In community service. Towards the end of this podcast, tell us a bit about that
stuff.
work. Yeah.
So I became a youth worker in 2004, and got into the youth work community service sector from 2004 to this day, still doing it. And how I got into it wasn't the story how people thought it was. It wasn't like, oh, I want to help people and blah, blah, blah. I was 20 years old, a couple of years out of college, and just had no idea what I wanted to do. My dad sat me down one day and said, look, you got to do something with yourself. You're not doing anything. I was working. I was doing jobs here. I was working in retail and doing kitchen hand stuff. I was working. I've always had the work ethic, but I wasn't. My dad was like, you got to go to TAFE. You got to do something right like that. And I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. And my dad said to me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do music. And he laughed at me. And that really struck a chord, obviously leading down that thing as well. But he said, look, your uncle does youth work stuff. Why don't you go to TAFE? Why don't you go to there's a information session in a couple of weeks. You should go. And I was really nervous about it, because I was like, I don't know what youth work is. But long story short, I ended up going. It seemed pretty straightforward. Yeah. Went to TAFE, done the courses, really liked it. It was actually part of, and this goes back to the whole, I said, certain things are set in place for you.
Yeah.
I couldn't have imagined in this life not being a youth worker and doing something else. It was meant to be. It was set in stone, really was. And as the years progressed, I realized that I was actually good at that job. And it worked pass and parcel with the music stuff, because what I started doing was, I became a youth worker, got my 2 diplomas, and actually started working in youth work in probably 2004, because this is funny enough in regards to how I say everything happens for a reason. You have to do 200 hours.
Yes.
Work. You have to do 250 hours non-paid work experience through TAFE. And I was like, how am I going to do that? Plus, I'm trying to work and make money. I'm living home with my parents, but I'm still making my own money. Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to do it. The youth centre, the O'Connor Youth Centre on Chandler Street, the youth centre that I actually have approached first and saying, hey, my name's blah, blah, blah. I'm at TAFE. I'm seeing if there's any work available to do, about 200 hours. And they had just started a new youth services called U-Turn Youth Services. Yeah. I did a couple of shifts there, and then they're like, we just started this new service. We're actually going to hire you as a casual, and then you can do hours on top of that as well. And that just started the process. And for the 4 years I worked there, I actually started doing some running hip-hop songwriting workshops. So songwriting, because once again I was like, well, I've been writing poetry since I was 15. This is easy.
So this is it's like rolling off a log.
It's easy. So I started doing that. So I ran a couple of workshops over a couple of years for different organizations. So that worked pass and parcel. But what happened was, as the years progressed with the music stuff, especially when I was working at the school in Canberra, I'd be in the Canberra Times all the time. Canberra Times were great. Shout out to the Canberra Times. I've got to give a shout out to the Canberra Times. I actually haven't given them a shout out before, but the Canberra Times, the newspaper, every single time I was dropping an album, every single time I was dropping a music video, they would interview me. They'll get someone out there and take photos and put me in the paper. Like Canberra Times, man, really were like, so the kids would see that. Yeah. So I'm there being a youth worker, talking to kids about, passion, you keep going, your dreams and blah, blah. But I've got proof to back it up. Yeah. I'm in the paper, I'm doing this and doing that. So even since I've moved to Melbourne, shout out to George Basher when I was in the movie The Combination.
Yes.
Had a little 2-minute cameo. You know George Basher? He's a well-known Lebanese, he's in Sydney, he's massive. Yeah. He goes for Parramatta Eels as well.
He does go for Parramatta Eels,
You should get George on the show if you haven't got George on the show. I know people knew me around the country, but I didn't know the extent. Yeah. But since I moved to Melbourne and I worked in a couple of the schools in the southeast, a lot of kids come up to me and go, bro, you're that guy in The Combination. I see you in that movie. And it freaked me out because I'm like, I'm used to having that. Yeah. So whatever I say now is gold, because I'm saying, whatever I'm saying to you, they're like, Yes, because this guy's doing all these things. No other job would have.
It sort of fits, right?
Fits.
But do you feel a real sense of responsibility on your shoulders when you rub shoulders with those kids and do what you do?
I've done the job for so long.
Yeah.
And from day one, I've always had a rule that once I leave work, I'd always leave it at the door.
Okay.
But it goes part and parcel because when I would go home, I'd be straight into the music.
Yes.
So I had a way to shut off. Yes, there's a responsibility, but I've always, as long as I conduct myself professionally and respectfully every day when I'm there with those young people, I can sleep good night.
In a role like those, is it hard to make a difference, or do you genuinely feel that you've made a difference in that?
80% of the time you make the difference. So if you look at a percentage, right, on whether it's a year-to-year basis or overall in the 20s of the youth work career,
yeah,
I would say 95% of them you help. The 5% are the ones that just aren't ready,
yeah,
either at the time, and they change later. Because you can't really you can never put a time limit on this. Some people might have the light bulb moment at 25.
Yeah.
As long as they get it at some point in their life that's not too old, too way down the track, then they've got a whole life, to live, then that's fine. Then there's some of them who it's just the way life goes. And I'm dealing with some people, kids I'm working with in Melbourne, and then some people I work with in Canberra. It's just human nature. Some young people just don't want to be helped. The way when it crosses paths is when it's like these young people that I've helped or try to help, and then they see you doing positive things, but then it's like they're so dark and such a dark. And what I felt at that point was like, but I haven't worked in that school for a long time,
but it still came out. To use an analogy of an artist, right? If you haven't got a frame, it's hard to do the painting. And some of those kids, because of the situation they're in, the frame may be very blurry, and so the point of references are hard. I had a panel podcast last year with a bunch of educators and youth workers and religious leaders in Western Sydney. And one of those was Albert Tavita, Samoan fellow that's deep in education in Western Sydney. Shout out to Albert. And he was telling us about some of his counselling and support for young kids through their school years. And he said one of the most satisfying things was that he told us about this kid that he always used to have trouble with and never seemed to be able to connect with. And 5 years later, he saw the kid in the street growing up, and the kid came up to me and said, "Albert, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here." And so time sometimes can heal, and times, I think, sometimes makes the difference. Albert said, I was doing my best at the time, and I'm thinking I'm not making any ground, but actually he was. It just took that time to work through. But other kids, it's too dark, I guess, is what you're saying.
But so that's me in a nutshell. I mean,
How good.
It's been it's been an interesting journey. And the most beautiful thing about this whole journey is that as I'm getting older, I'm evolving and things. I'm finding new things that I'm good at and becoming a different person. I'm growing.
So give us a window into the next part of the journey.
So the next part of the journey is I've been working on the last couple of years just a whole new sound. So not just rapping and blah blah blah, just more harmonizing. So I'm kind of like singing rapping. So I'm rapping, but I'm singing, kind of thing. And I've had to teach that. That's another thing I'm teaching myself that.
So how does that sound?
You're not going to hear it today.
But it's just. How would you describe it?
It's just me. It's just me. It's actually a lot of where I've actually, you asked me where I get my inspiration from. It's me just listening to music a lot. I listen to music a lot every day, obviously. I'm listening to music. And there's an artist my favorite artist is called Kevin Gates. Yeah. He's my favorite rapper. And I emulate off the way he sounds, where he's rapping, but he's singing. It just sounds deep. It just sounds cool. So Kevin Gates, and you check him out. You understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
He mixes it up. So that's That's an exciting thing, that my sound's going to be different. But I'm also putting my eggs in different baskets. So I want to get really back into I want to do more TV stuff. I want to do more, like, the Kayo Marbilus brand is just, there's no limits.
Yes.
I started off as a rapper, as a musician.
Yeah.
But that's what it started off as. But now it's going to be, I plan for it to be just the entertainer, the artist entertainer, the.
So at the top of this, and coming into this, before we caught up, I thought about, how do I introduce this dude? He's so talented. I don't want to pigeonhole him, right? And I thought to myself, I'll use the word entertainer. Is that what the brand's about at the end of the day, moving forward?
So music is always going to be there. I plan to get back in the studio in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Time and money, and just to get in there and just start putting out the new sound.
Yeah.
That's going to be exciting. I want to keep doing the podcast and stuff. I want to just keep getting my face out there. People hear the voice
Yes.
and so forth. Do more Netflix stuff. That was a really big eye opener for me.
Yeah.
Because music is cool and music is awesome. That's where it started. But something about TV, movies, it's a different level, right?
And that's exciting.
It's fun,
right?
you know,
Yeah.
having fun with life and just doing whatever, you know?
Yeah, and I can see at the end of the day, excuse the business analogy, but I think you're a pretty commercial business entrepreneur.
Appreciate it.
And a real entertainer. And the energy from this session has been amazing. It's great to have you on Let's Talk Business. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Pleasure.
Cheers, bro.
Thanks, man. That's awesome.
That was Kayo Marbilus, an entertainer, an entrepreneur, a very talented dude. And it was a pleasure to have him on board. The energy in this room is just amazing. I hope you enjoyed it.